Hello and welcome to Friday's edition of Cracking the Cryptic. And on screen today, Mark suggested that I try this puzzle by DiMono. Now, I think Mark has asked me to do this because if you watched yesterday's video, which was an extraordinary puzzle by Qodec, and DiMono had a hand in that puzzle and sort of polished it somehow. And Mark says that this one would be a good follow-up puzzle to the Qodec puzzle yesterday. So I'm very happy to do this. I think I've done 3 DiMono puzzles on the channel and they've all been excellent. So he's certainly a compiler I have an awful lot of time for. Now, anything else I want to mention before we kick off with the solve? Yeah, a couple of things. You've only got 1 day left to get your solution into Sam Kappelman-Lyons' competition puzzle. We're judging the entries according to logical reasoning and artistic impression. And you can send your entry into crackingthecryptic@gmail.com. And the winner will get some merchandise. And also, hopefully on Sunday, we're going to release for patrons of the channel on Patreon Sam's video explaining how to solve the puzzle logically. So if you have given it a go and you thought, whoa, and that would be a perfectly rational reaction to that Sudoku because it is extremely beastly, then you might want to check out that video. Now, our Kickstarter book campaign is very nearly over. So if you haven't had a look at it yet, I really do recommend it. This is our attempt to create the greatest Sudoku book in the history of, well, the world, and I'm sure that we're going to do that. And we're working up towards this stretch goal at the moment that will mean all of the new puzzles in the book, and there should be, I think, 27 new puzzles is the current working count. All of those new puzzles will Mark and I are going to do a blind solve of those puzzles that will be available to people who own the book. So that is quite exciting. It's quite daunting for me, but this is the intention. So have a look at it. There's a card on the screen. Now, let's get on with the rules of DiMono's new puzzle. What we've got is, it's called the Pinwheel, by the way. I think that's because if you highlight the cages, you can see it looks a bit like a wheelie thing. Normal Sudoku rules apply. In cages, digits must sum to the small clue in the top left corner of the cage, and digits cannot repeat within a cage. So that's completely standard killer Sudoku rules. And clues outside the grid give the sum of the digits along the indicated diagonal. Digits may repeat along a diagonal. So completely standard little killer Sudoku rules. So the 30 clue there, for example, is summing those yellow cells. And you can repeat digits. Obviously, those 2 digits can't be the same. If you do that, make those both 9s, that's going to break the rules of Sudoku in this box. But you could, for example, you couldn't have a 9 there, but you could have a 9 there, and that would be absolutely fine. So that's what we know. Do have a go yourselves. The way to play, of course, is to click the link under the video as usual. With that, I get to play on this Friday the 13th. Let's see if it's unlucky for me. Let's get cracking. Now, where shall we look? I'm actually tempted to look at what we looked at yesterday straight away. That is a bit of a suggestive ring in the grid, isn't it? Let me just check the little killer clues. Yeah, I mean 36 in 5 cells is averaging close to 7, but it's got degrees of freedom in it, hasn't it? Okay, this is interesting. Right, so yesterday I spent a few minutes of the video talking about something called the Fistermaphel Ring, which is a beautiful geometric trick that exists in all Sudokus that very few people who don't watch Cracking the Cryptic know about. And this trick, which, well, it might not be relevant here, but even if I look at the cage totals, none of them are particularly revealing. And it is interesting that these cages on the outside of the grid all sit, or on the outside of the ring here, all sit within the 2x2 regions that the ring affects. Now, I'm about to explain. If you're wondering what I'm talking about, and you didn't watch yesterday's video, if you've never watched Cracking the Cryptic before, you may not be familiar with this. I don't really want to spend a few minutes talking about it if it's wrong. But actually, maybe I could add up the cages. That would give me at least an idea about whether or not we're talking about something sensible. So I've got 39 there, 40, 60, 72, 85, 93. Yeah, these are too low. These are too low. This must be important. So this ring adds to 93. Now, why is that interesting me? Well, it's because I know that the contents of this ring, these 16 digits that appear in this ring of the Sudoku, are the same 16 digits that appear in the blue cells. Now, if you're anything like me, and like I was when I was first introduced to this idea, you'll be like, no, that's just absolute cobblers. Well, it's not cobblers, it's actually true, and I will spend a second or two just explaining why it's true. So the way I tend to think about this nowadays is, imagine somebody said to you, okay, let's define what this ring is equal to, and let's do it by reference to rows and columns. So if we look at row 3 of the grid, how would you define these 5 cells looking at row 3? Well, you could describe the red cells as equal to the digits 1 to 9, the set of digits 1 to 9, minus whatever digits we put in these yellow dominoes. That would give us the contents of the these red cells here. Now you can do the same thing in row 7, look. We could describe these red cells as equal to the set of digits 1 to 9 minus those dominoes. Now, how could we deal with the columns? Well, quite similarly, we could say these red cells here are equal to the set of the digits 1 to 9 minus those yellow cells, and these cells are equal to the set of the digits 1 to 9 minus those dominoes there. Now, the eagle-eyed will spot that in defining the red ring in that way, we did actually slightly go too far, because we included these 4 corner cells twice, because we included them once when we looked at the row and once when we looked at the column. So, in summary, the way we could define the red ring is it's equal to 4 sets of the digits 1 to 9 minus these yellow dominoes minus whatever we put in those 4 corner squares. One lot of whatever we put in the corner squares. That will be an exact definition of the set of digits that appear in the red ring. Now you may say, well, how on earth is that in any way related to the blue cells? Well, I'm going to show you. I want to think about this 2 by 2 in the top left hand corner, and we're going to define this 2 by 2 not by reference to rows and columns, but by reference to this box. How would we describe the blue cells by reference to this box? Now you can see this box is made up of the digits 1 to 9. So actually the blue cells are equal to the set of digits 1 to 9 minus this domino, minus that domino, and minus this 1 corner square. Now this is probably sounding familiar to you. How would we define this blue box? Well, it's going to be the set of digits 1 to 9 minus this domino, minus that square. And if we go round the grid, we will discover, of course, that these blue 2 by 2s in the corner are equal to 4 sets of the digits 1 to 9 minus all of the yellow dominoes minus these 4 corner squares of the ring. In other words, they are exactly, that we can define them exactly the same as the ring itself. Now, if they're both can be defined by reference to exactly the same digits, they are the same. So actually the red cells here need to be, or are, exactly the same digits that we'd find in the blue cells. So, you know, if we had, well, that's all we need to know, hopefully, in order to solve this puzzle. Now, what does this tell us in the context of this puzzle? I'm just going to get rid of the yellow highlighting. And what I'm thinking is, if the red cells added up to 93, and I know that the blue cells therefore also add to 93, I ought to be able to work out the value of these cells here, because these are going to be, well, let's look at it. We've got 13 there, 22, 28. So the cells that are not in cages in the 2 by 2s in the corner are equal to the difference between 93 and 28, which is 65. Now that is very high. Yeah, it's very high. In fact, it's very, very high because there are 8 of these yellow cells, and 65 divided by 8, I don't know what it is exactly. Well, I do know what it is exactly, actually, but it's clearly averaging over 8. And therefore, that in and of itself is saying that they are very highly restricted. Now, how can we get a handle on what exactly they are, though? Well, one thing we could try is if we look at row 1 of the grid, what's the maximum value I could make those 3 cells? They're all in the same row of the Sudoku, so the maximum I could make those would be 7, 8 and 9. Same thing, actually, look for row 9 of the grid. So that would give us 24 plus another 24 is 48. So these 2 squares, that's the absolute maximum I can make those 6 squares. So the minimum I can make those 2 squares, therefore, to get up to 60, was it 65 or 60? It was 65. Yeah, so the minimum these 2 squares have to add up to, the minimum is 17. So they have to be at least 8 and 9. Now, that is almost wonderful, but it is not quite wonderful. Because these 2 yellow squares are not in the same row, column or box of the Sudoku, so they could both be 9. I mean, it's not disastrous, but it does mean we don't actually know what they are, because if these were both 9, I could reduce one of these 6 cells by 1 exactly. I could reduce one of these cells by exactly 1, and the rest would have to stay as their maximums. So, but it would mean that we could have a 6 somewhere in the yellow cells, which is... So can we... Is there some way of... 2, 3... So we got... 2, 3, 4... No, it's fine. It's fine. We can do it. We can do it. Because let's imagine that we do make these maximums. We do make this 7, 8 and 9. Therefore, we know these add to 17, so they are 8 and 9. Now, that means that we have to put 8 instances of the digits 7, 8 and 9 into the red squares, because we know that their 2 things are identical to each other. But look, in a 13 cage, you can't put more than 1 of 7, 8 and 9. If you put 7 in, you can't put an 8 or a 9 in as well, or you will make the cage total too high. So this can only take 1 of the digits 7, 8 and 9. This can only take 1. That's 1, 2, 3, 4. Same's true for 12. 5. So in these cells I can put a maximum of 5 instances of the digits 7, 8 and 9. Well, in the 21 cage I can't put more than 2. If I put 7, 8 and 9 in a 21 cage, it will equal 24, not 21. So that means it's not possible. You obviously can't put a 7, 8 or 9 in an 8 cage. I hope that goes without saying. I can't put 0, for example, into that cell. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 is the maximum numbers. We can put 7 instances of 7, 8 and 9 in the Fistermaphel ring. Therefore, this arrangement of the blue squares is impossible. We can't have 8 instances of 7, 8 and 9, so we must increase these to 9 in order to allow ourselves to access a 6 in one of those squares. And therefore we get some digits. Look, we got digits here, here, and we get some eliminations there. And so, oh no, we can do more than this. We can do more than this because I know that one of these sets of 3 digits, either in row 1 or row 9, will still have to equal 7, 8 and 9, and the other one will equal 6, 8 and 9. Now, that means that there are still 2 more 9s to find. There are actually 4 9s in the Fistermaphel ring. Well, if there are 2 more 9s to find, the only place I can put a 9 in the row 1 is there. The only place I can put a 9 in row 9 is there. So we get 9s. We get all the 9s. We've still got to have an 8 in each row, so there's still 2 8s to come, 1 7 and 1 6. But Look at this. Now I've got to put 4 9s in the Fistermaphel ring. Now, the Fistermaphel ring, I'm calling it a ring, but it's actually a square. I should call it the Fistermaphel square. Now, if we call it a square, one of the things about squares is that they have 4 sides. Now, I know that this is another knowledge bomb from Cracking the Cryptic, but if there are 4 sides, I've got to put 1 9 on each side, otherwise I will repeat the 9 in the row or column. Now, if that's the case, I can never use a corner of the Fistermaphel square for a 9, because if I put a 9 here, for example, that's removing all of those cells from being all of these cells from being 9s, and I've still got to put 3 9s into just these cells here. You can't do that without repeating a digit in a row or a column. So these squares can't be 9s, and that means I can place a 9 in the top on the top edge. You can't put a 9 in an 8 cage, you can't put a 9 in a corner, so I've got to put a 9 here. Now I can't put a 9 in those 2 squares or in the corner, so I have to put a 9 in the 12 cage. Now, I can't put a 9 in okay, yeah, so neither of those can be a 9 now because of these 9s, so I've got to put a 9 in there because I can't put it in the corner. So 9 goes here. I've got one more 9 to place here, and I can't put it here because if I put 9 there, I have to put 4 there and that will clash. So the 9 goes in that one, and we have ourselves a start. Now, so I actually love this. I mean, this is a very unusual example of how to start with the Fistermaphel technique, but it's really gorgeous. So now, okay, right. Yeah, okay, we can carry on with this logic, I think, because I know that these cells here, the cells I'm highlighting, consist of 2 8s, a 7 and a 6. So I've still got to put 2 8s, a 7 and a 6 in this ring. Well, those 2 squares add up to 12 because they're in a 21 cage that already contains a 9. So how many of the digits 8, 7 and 6 can I put into that domino? Well, the answer is 1, because if I put one of them in and I added another one, it wouldn't add up to 12. So this domino contains one of the digits 8, 8, 7 and 6, which means that these 2 dominoes have to contain 3 of the digits 8, 8, 7 and 6. This one obviously can't have an 8, 7 or 6 in it because that's just too small. So if I've got to put 2 of the digits 6, 7 and 8 effectively into these 2 dominoes here, the only way I can do that is if one of them is a 6 and a 7. Now, if one of these dominoes is a 6 and a 7, the other domino must contain the 8, which is fine. I could make that 8, 5. But the point, I think, is that there is still 1 8 left to place. I can't put 2 8s into these squares, given that I need to put 6 and 7 into one of them. So the other 8 must go back in there, which makes it a 4 and an 8. So one of these is 6, 7, one of these is 5, 8. But we're going to go further, because now I've got 3 4s in the Fistermaphel square. Now, where can those 4s go? In the blue squares? Well, on the face of it, there's a few options, but there aren't really. I can never put 4 in an 8 cage because I'll have to have another 4 in it. So you can never put a 4 in this part, this 2x2. So there must be 1 4, because I need to put 3 4s in each of those cages, and that tells us the cages. That is absolutely lovely. So this is we can just get them. Look, we even get digits 4, 5 pointing at a 2, 4 pair. That's a 2, that's a 4, that's a 4, that's a 1. All right, we don't get many digits, but we got some digits. We get that 4. That's got to be an 8. That's a 4. That's a 4. That's a 9. Now look, this 8 cage is resolved now, because I've got a 1 and a 2 in the blue squares, and I can't put 1 and 2 in a 13 cage, so the 8 cage must contain a 1 and a 2, and therefore it also contains a 5. Oh, I see. So the 8 cage is a 3-5 cage now, and we can see that in a variety of ways. One way of seeing it would be to notice that you can't put any more 1s and 2s in the Fistermaphel ring because of the options. You'd have to put it in the 13 cage. The other way is to see that we've not yet placed a 3 in the blue squares. So the only place it could go is in the 8 cage. So this must be 3-5, and this 3-5 is pointing down here. That places a 4 there by Sudoku. 4 in one of these 3 cells. This puzzle is absolutely beautiful. It's not monstrous. It probably is absolutely monstrously hard, actually, if you've never seen this technique before. But if you start with this technique, it's just gorgeous. Again from DiMono. 5s, look, that's got to be a 5, I think. And if that's a 5 by Sudoku, that's an 8. Therefore, this must be a 6-7 pair. 8. Oh no, 8 could go in one of 3 places there. 2. Yeah, look. 1, 2, 5 here. Where do those digits go? In this box. The 2, 5 must go there. That can't be an 8. This is 1, 6, or 7. To complete this column. That means that's an 8 in the corner. That's not 8. Yeah, okay, now we know these corner squares had to have 2 8s in them because there are 2 8s in the Fistermaphel ring. Well, now that must be the second 8. This is a 6-7 pair. There must be an 8 in one of these cells. There must be an 8 in one of these cells. And those cells. I could be missing something, but I'm not seeing a great many opportunities to keep using these red squares now. No, it's all sort of, I think the wind has gone out of my sails somewhat, so presumably we have to look at the little killer clues sometime soon. If that's a 1, 6, 7 triple, this is a 3, 5 pair. This is a 1, 2 pair. Therefore, this has got to be 3, 6, or 7. There's a 3 on the left-hand side, therefore, of box 4. That's these 3s interacting. But nothing's quite hitting, is it, as we scan? So, where shall we look? Oh, yeah, look. The 30 clue here has got a 1 or a 2 on it now. Oh, so it can never have a 4 here. Yeah, let's look at this. These 4 yellow cells now have got to sum up to at least 28 and possibly 29. Oh, and you can't put a 9 on them. Oh, goodness me. Right. Now, if you can't put a 9 in any of those cells, you definitely can't have a 4. That would be ridiculous, because then, yeah, you'd have to have a sequence of 8s. You'd have to have repeated 8s in box 4 in order for that to work. This is not 4. This is not 3 for exactly the same reason. So what are the options here? It's interesting, actually. Look, there's a 5 in this box as well. So this square here, actually this can't be 8. So surely this has to be 6 or 7, because it can't be 5 and it can't be 9 or 8. And if it was, we know it can't be 4 because we've already done the maths on that. So this is 6 or 7. That creates a 6-7 pair in row 1. This could be 8. Oops, so that could be, this is either 15. If this is 8, this is either 14 or 15. And then this is at least 13. But again, it's quite restricted. Repeat the 8. Sorry, I feel like I'm gibbering a bit at the moment. I'm not actually seeing... I can see this has to be a 6 or a 7, but I'm not seeing any massive restriction. I mean, there's a couple of degrees of freedom on this diagonal. 3, that's got to be a 6 or a 7 by Sudoku, look, because there's a 3 already in this box. So this is 3, 6 or 7 over here. One of those two squares is a 3. Right, let's look at another little killer. 36 little killer is also quite high. Now, oh, that can't be a 1, surely. Let's look at this. So we need the yellow squares to add to 28 again. Well, this was 28 or 29 in this direction. So this is also restricted. That can't be 1. It's impossible to get to 28 if we make that a 1, because those 3 squares would all have to equal 9, which is clearly impossible. Ah, look, you can't put a 9 in this one either. Oh, so on both of these diagonals you can't ever have a 9. Oh, I see. Right. Now, hang on. This is interesting because... Look. Oh, this is clever. Ah, I should have seen this earlier. But this 8 here and this 8 here, I think, are important. Because... In fact, I'm going to highlight these diagonals in order to show what I'm thinking here. Look. So these are the 2 diagonals we're interested in. And it looked like this one had a couple of degrees of freedom. And it looks like this one has a couple of degrees of freedom. But that presumed that we could put as many 8s as we wanted in the diagonals. But we can't. Because of this 8 here and this 8 here, the 8, if there is an 8 on this diagonal, like let's put one here, it removes the ability to have 2 8s on the other diagonal. So you couldn't have an, if there's an 8 here, you can't have an 8 here anymore. Yeah, oh, I see. And it's the same in this box. If you put an 8 here, obviously you can't have an 8 there. So you can only have a maximum of 1 8 on these diagonals. And if you and if you don't have any 8s, you can't get as high as you need, because if you make those green squares all 6, 6 and 7, you'd have 13 plus 13 is 26 plus 8 is 34, which is not equal to 36. So there has to be an 8 on this diagonal. Exactly the same logic here. There's got to be an 8 on this diagonal. So there is exactly 1 8 on each diagonal. And that means, so there's either an 8 here and an 8 here, or there's an 8 here and an 8 here. So we've got the weirdest sort of offset skyscraper. But. That means one of those squares has to be an 8. And if one of those squares has to be an 8, you can't partner it with a 6. Yeah, this is clever. If this is 8, now let's say this one was 8. It doesn't matter. One of these is 8. And therefore we have to find a partner for it here. Now if it's 6 on either diagonal, so if this is 6 8 or if this is 6 8, 6 and 8 add to 14. Well, that would mean on this diagonal I'd need those 2 squares to add up to 14, which requires another 8 because I can't use 9. Same thing here. This one's even worse. This would have to add up to at least 14. And again, I need to use either a 9 or a repeated 8, and I can't repeat the 8 on either of these diagonals because it breaks the other diagonal. So what does all that mean? It means that's no way a 6, that is a 7. This is not necessarily an 8. We don't know which one of these is an 8. The 7 gives us a 6 in the corner. 3, 7 here, so this becomes a 6. So these squares now... Oh, so where does 7 go in this box? 7 has to go here by Sudoku. This has to be a 1 or a 2. 7 is not down here anymore. So 7 goes in the corner. 7 is not here anymore. And... so one of these is an 8. So if it's this one, we get 15. I then need 13 here without using 8. So this would have to be 6, 7. So the 6 would have to go there. This would have to be 7. If this is not an 8, it would have to be a 6, because it can't be a 5. So that would give 13 here. This would have to be 15. I can now use an 8, but the 8 has to go there. So this is always 7. This is always 7. This square is 6 or 8. And presumably I can do the same thing here. And I'm going to be able to limit the value of this square. So if this is 8, I get 15, and I need at least 13 here. Without, yeah, but if this is 8, I can't repeat the 8, so I have to go 6, 7 again. Which would have to be this way round. That would have to be 6, that would have to be 7. If this is not 8, it has to be 6. This would be 13. This needs to be at least 15. I'm allowed an 8 now, and this can't be 7. That's actually, that disambiguates it then. So it's not actually possible for this to be 8, because if this is 8, I need this to be a 7, and it can't be. So that tells us that this is 6, this is 7, this is 8, this is 6, this is 8, and now hopefully if we add up these totals we will find we have the correct totals, and we do get 36 that way, and we do get 15. Yes, well, we get 30 if I make that a 2, so that's got to be a 2. That gives us a 1, 5 pair in box 2. These squares are 2, 3 and 4, which that one is not 4. Good grief. I'm sure there's a better way of doing this, but I feel like I fiddled my way to disambiguate those two options. Now this 2 means this is a 1. It's the singularly most useless 1 in the history of Sudoku. Now, what do we do now then? Presumably this 7 is fixing the 7 and the 3 up there. That 3 is fixing the 3 and the 5. Okay. That's not 8 anymore. So these two squares have got to be 5 and 6, which we can fill in, because by Sudoku, that's got to be the 5. That's got to be a 6. 6 has got to be in one of these squares. This has got to be a 1, 2 pair. And suddenly it feels like we're going a little bit faster. Okay. Keep going, keep going. 6 here fills in this square. That's a 7 by Sudoku. That gives us a 6, 1, 7. We get all of those digits done. 7 must be here by Sudoku. That's the interaction of all the 7s we've got in the grid. And now maybe this one. Yeah, look. 33, but I've got 3 of the digits now. So they add up to 19. So these have to add up to 14 without using 9. So these are 6 and 8. And you can see that 8 must go in that square. Therefore, this should be a 6. Therefore, this is a 6. 6 is got to be in one of these squares. This has got to be a 1, 2 pair. And suddenly it feels like we're going a little bit faster. Okay. Keep going, keep going. 6 here fills in this square. That's a 7 by Sudoku. That gives us a 6, 1, 7. We get all of those digits done. 7 must be here by Sudoku. That's the interaction of all the 7s we've got in the grid. And now maybe this one. Yeah, look. 33, but I've got 3 of the digits now. So they add up to 19. So these have to add up to 14 without using 9. So these are 6 and 8. And you can see that 8 must go in that square. Therefore, this should be a 6. 6 is got to be a 1, 2 pair. And 8 must be in one of these two squares. Now this diagonal, we've got 20. We need 5. Oh, we can't put 8 in either of those. Oh, we couldn't have put 8 into them anyway. Oh, we can't put 8 here, so 8 must go there, which fixes the 8 in the middle. These two squares add up to 5, and neither of them can be a 4, so this can't be a 1-4 pair. This must be a 2-3 pair, and there's a 2 there. So this is 3, this is 2, that's a 2, that's a 1. This 3 fixes the 3 and the 6. That square's a 1 by Sudoku. So these two squares are 2 and 5, which I don't think I can do yet. These two squares are 1 and 3. You can see the juxtaposition of the 1s in columns 1 and 9 mean that we can ask one of these squares has got to be a 1 in the central box, so it's got to be in one of those two places. We still haven't got this 3, 9 figured out. But we have, once we use this 9 and this 9. They shave off those positions from 9s in the central box, so 9's got to be here. That places 9 here, that places 3 here. These squares need to include a 2, so this is a 1, 2, 9 triple. These squares are 3, 4 and 5, and we've got a 4 there. So 4 goes here, 4 goes here. Therefore the 4, 9 gets resolved. That places the 9 there. Those two squares are 3 and 5. That's a bit useful because it fixes that one. So that's 1, 3, 2, 1. And now it must be Sudoku. I'm missing an elimination. It's this 1. Look, this 1 is seeing the 1, 5. Now that presumably, unless I've made a bad error, is going to tidy up the whole of the rest of the puzzle. Yeah, 1, 2, and now the 2 and the 5 get resolved, and there you go. Yes, what a great puzzle. Again, that was not, well, it was beautiful at the start. I loved the stuff with the Fistermaphel square. And then I think I got a bit stuck here, disambiguating this sort of chevron using these 30 and 36 little killer clues. I think I made a meal of that. I couldn't see a way to do that cleverly. So if you did spot a way to do it cleverly, do let me know in the comments. I do read them and I'm always interested in them. Thank you so much for watching, and we'll be back later with another edition of Cracking the Cryptic.